Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. The production chain is undergoing its most significant transformation in decades. And while it is impossible to predict all the ways in which COVID-19 will reshape the business, we shall hold on to a vision of an industry that reduces the environmental impact and increases social justice. We know that the current situation is a tremendous stress test for consumers and businesses of all sizes. Therefore, we want to thank all of you for your continued commitment, and I can assure you that the work we are all doing here has never been so tested, but also never been so important. First, we would like to start by introducing ourselves. So I am Karen Ekberg, the CEO and founder of Leadership and Sustainability. And we also have Laura online. So as I said, my name is Karen Ekberg. I'm the founder of Leadership and Sustainability. We have a long experience and we work with team members who have long and technical experience as well in the environmental area, but also in the social area. And we are really committed to improving performance at corporate strategic level, but also at facility level. So we work also in a pragmatic way, but in a systematic way too. And the name Leadership and Sustainability comes from the wish to combine leadership and sustainability. We think both of them complement each other and are important in order to be successful. I have spent several years at Adidas managing environment globally, but I have also spent time at other companies working at the level of sustainability director. And within leadership and sustainability, we work with many of the bigger brands. We also work with a lot of you suppliers who are now online as well. And let me take you through the agenda for today. So after our welcome and introduction, we will go through an overview of the verification process. And we will have a walkthrough of the Higg FEM verification about how to plan and prepare for the verification, how to select a verifying body, and then how the actual verification takes place. And so this webinar really focuses on the entire verification process. And after that, we will have time for questions and discussions. So you can begin already now to send your questions via the question function, but we will also have time to collect them later on in this webinar. We will talk a bit about the added value of implementing the Higg FEM and also give some additional information about leadership and sustainability. And we will be finished within less than 1 hour from now. So let's continue now with the verification process overview. So we have identified 7 simple process steps. At first, you complete your self-assessment, the FEM, and then as a second step, you engage the verifier and you provide information on aspects such as your type of factory, the type of manufacturing you have, number of employees, the use of chemicals in production, which chemical level you have reached, which results overall you have reached, your wastewater treatment, and of course also the address and details about the factory. And we ask those questions, especially about the chemical level reached and if you use chemicals in production and your overall score in order to estimate how much time we need to spend for the verification. And of course, also, as you know, we may need a chemical specialist verifier. And a chemical specialist verifier is needed whenever you have chemicals in production and have reached levels 2 and 3 in the chemical section. Then you always need a chemical specialist verifier. A generalist verifier is not allowed to verify levels 2 and 3 for factories that have chemicals in production. And then as a third step, you make your self-assessment available to the verifier. So you need to have the VFEM. So you need to buy also the VFEM if you don't have it previously. And then the verifier, as a preparation, will review your documents and potentially also inform you about any issues beforehand. And then the Verify sends an agenda, and we can conduct the actual verification. And then there will be the reporting phase as well. So this is just to give you an overview of the entire process. And you can see here also, once you receive the slide deck, you can click on those links to get the specific and detailed guidance from Sustainable Apparel Coalition about on-site verification and off-site verification. But we will also talk a bit more about the difference as well between the on-site verification and the off-site verification. On this slide, you can see the Higg FEM cycle for 2020. Please be aware that next year it will look different, since the deadlines, for example, for posting your self-assessment have been extended twice this year. So originally, at the beginning of this year, the deadline to post your self-assessments was actually end of April 2020. And it has now been moved to August 14. So that's the deadline for the self-assessment if you wish to be able to post and unpost your self-assessment as many times as you wish. So until August 14, you can post it. Perhaps you then remember that you forgot something, you want to add something into your self-assessment, then you unpost it, you make the change you wanted to do, and then you can post it again. But after August 14, once you have posted it, you cannot unpost it. So then after August 14, there is the content will be frozen, will be locked, and you can only post your self-assessment once. It's still allowed to post later, but you can only do it once. And the reason is that SAC and Higg Core, where the platform is based, they need the content for the benchmarking. So they do the benchmarking of all the facilities, which is of course a great reference and support to all facilities. And of course, there may be new facilities who have not been working with the Higg FEM previously and who join only later. And they can, of course, also come online after August 14 and post. But also for them, the same rule, they can only post once. And then what is important, you can only buy the Higg FEM and Higg FEM. The FEM you need if you want to do a verification. And the purchase of that is allowed until October 31st. In November and December, you cannot purchase any modules anymore, because then the next cycle is already open to buy for 2021, which is of course the module 2020. So please be aware of that. Even if you are thinking about verifying later, you still need to buy the VFEM at the end of October. And we saw that last year we had a lot of facilities who actually missed verification because they hadn't bought the VFEM. And the verification can take place until December 31st, so until the very end of December. And of course, the VFEM, obviously, after the verification can also be posted until December 31st. But you cannot post it later than that. And also, regarding the posting, unposting, the actual verified modules, they can only be posted once. So you need to be careful that you really check the verified module, that you agree with all the results, etc., and then you can post it. Yes, so a lot of deadlines, and of course also you may be working for brands or have buyers who are asking you to finalize and post your self-assessment earlier, and potentially also to do the verification. So we have I know that several of the facilities that are online now, that you have earlier deadlines for your verifications. So now let's move on and talk about the actual verification. And we will start, of course, with how to plan and prepare. And on this on this slide, you can see a screenshot from what we call a staff engagement list. And the staff engagement list supports you to make sure that the relevant subject matter experts have been engaged to get the most accurate information for each section. So this is obviously already for your self-assessment. It is helpful if you are using this. And then during the verification, you can make sure that you have the people involved who have helped you also with the self-assessment. And in order to prepare well, you should take some basic steps. You complete your Higg FEM self-assessment and you answer all required questions. And here you can see a link to the How to Higg guidance that give you all the details you need about how to complete the self-assessment, but also how it will be verified. So that is the How to Higg guidance. And there is also actually an e-learning course on how to complete the FEM assessment. And there is a process guide for facilities with step-by-step instructions. So there are a lot of resources available, made available by HIGCO and SAC. And then also, of course, once you have completed your self-assessment, you should post it. No verification can take place unless you have actually posted your self-assessment. And in order to post, your completion rate must be over 95%. And then you, and as we mentioned also, the deadline has been extended to August 14. And of course, finally, you need to buy your VFEM if you haven't done so yet. If you are a member of SAC, a manufacturer member of SAC, then you have your VFEM for free. You don't need to buy it then. And then what is also really important, it sounds very straightforward, but it is really important that is to have your documentation available. So even during your self-assessment, please make sure that you upload the documents into the system and in the right spot, in the right place. That will save you a lot of time for your own sake, but also, of course, for during the verification. So you should have your documents available, all required documents, all supporting documents, and the verifier will do a completeness check then of all documents. So the verifier needs to have access to all documents in order to go through them and qualify them against the responses that you have done. And then additionally, for off-site verifications, we also need photo documentation. So when we are doing the on-site verifications, of course, we do a factory tour. We have the opportunity to see the factory. Usually the verifier will take photos if you allow to do so as well. But if we are doing off-site verifications, we don't have access to any photos. We cannot see the facility. We cannot see the factory and the different departments. And then it's important that we also have a photo documentation available. And let's have a look at an example. So this is what we send out to you whenever you select to do an off-site verification. And we basically have, according to the different sections in the Higg FEM and the different levels and questions, we have marked up where we would like to see a photo. And so that is, of course, needed so that we can assess, for example, there are questions of the segregation of hazardous and non-hazardous waste, the marking of the hazardous waste storage, the chemical hazard signage and safe handling equipment, etc. And so then we need you to take those photos and make available to us. So now you should also select a verifying body. So you have already decided that you want to do verification, and then you need to select the verifying body. And on the Sumera homepage, you can find a list. of verifier bodies that also indicates the location of the approved verifiers. And you can use this list to find a verifying body and then contact the verifying body for availability and for a quote. And then once you do that, you need to also give information about your factory address, your type of production, number of employees, wet processes, chemical use in production, wastewater treatment plant on site, and also which levels you have reached in the different sections. And as I mentioned before, this is just for us in order to assess how many days we would need, and also, of course, in order to assess if we need a chemical specialist verifier to support you. And this leads then to the engagement of a generalist or a chemical specialist Higg FEM verifier. And then there is also SAC has actually given guidelines about how to calculate the person day rate. So those guidelines you can find also on this slide here. They are just general guidelines, and verifying bodies may have their own approaches on how to calculate the number of days needed. And then when it comes to the actual costs, it may really differ a lot from verifying body to verifying body. All of us have different cost tables and cost approaches, but you should of course agree then upon the number of person days required. And then for the on-site verification especially, you need a calculation of the time and cost for the on-site visit, the time for the preparation and reporting time, transport cost, flight, for example, a visa, meals, and hotel. So there are, for on-site verifications, obviously a lot of additional costs being added to the actual verification time and cost. And after you have selected your verifying body, you will see the option also submit for verification. And so on your dashboard, and let me just show you the screenshot. So this is how your dashboard could look like. And there, once you have posted, you can even select the verifying body even if you are in the process of assessing. So you can see here in the middle of the screenshot, you can see the red marked here. There you can select your verifying body, and there, once you do that, there is a drop-down list where you can select the verifying body. But also, please don't forget to make sure that you finalize the assessment and post it before you start the actual verification. And now let's speak about the actual verification. So if you currently still are preparing your Higg FEM self-assessment, or even if you have completed it, either way, we encourage you to plan for your Higg FEM verification as soon as possible. So calendars are filling up, and of course you want to make sure that you can finalize the verification until the end of the year, or perhaps even earlier, depending if you have deadlines that have been defined by your buyers. We will of course make sure to support you as much as possible. And by verifying your results, you not only ensure that your scores are accurate and comparable, but you also add value to your business by enhancing your reputation and increasing your sustainability performance. And you will actually, during the verification, you will get a lot of guidance as well on how to improve and how to ensure that you respond to the questions in a correct way. And now, let's go and have a look at the difference between on-site and off-site verifications. So first, perhaps some information about the general approach taken by SAC. So in most times, we conduct on-site verifications. But due to obvious problems, many countries are in lockdown. It's very difficult to travel from a country to another, and within some countries there are also lockdowns so that it is even difficult to do domestic travel. And this means that in many cases now the facilities will rather have an off-site verification than an on-site verification. And there are some differences in how you can report about those verifications. So if you do an on-site verification, you can of course always, for both on-site and off-site, you can always share your results on the platform, on the Higg platform, with your partners on the platform. But if you do an on-site verification, you can also publish your results externally. And there is transparency package available for you once you have done the on-site verification that can help you in doing this. And there is a new rule now that you can do an on-site verification with a chemical specialist verification taking place off-site, so you can have the combination of on-site and off-site, and it is still counted as an as an on-site verification. So you have a generalist verifier on-site, and then you have a chemical specialist verifier joining via a webinar or via telephone to do the chemical specialist verification, and then it is still counted as an on-site verification. If you do an off-site verification, you can do now, previously that was not possible, you can have the entire module verified, so also the chemical section and levels 2 and 3. So that is allowed to do also off-site now. Previously last year that was not allowed. But of course, in those cases, you need a chemical specialist verifier if you have chemicals in your production. This is general, and we see that many factories are actually opting now for off-site verifications due to all those different travel restrictions. And it's not only the travel restrictions, it's actually also the unpredictability of the travel restrictions. So we know that we are based here in Germany, but of course we usually also travel to other countries, and we know that the travel restrictions, they change basically week by week. So it's also very difficult to plan for trips, and that is the reason that many facilities now are then selecting to go with off-site verification. And let me just show you a comparison between on-site and off-site. And on this slide, it looks as if there are not so many differences. We will walk through just the on-site verification here. So we usually, we seek to review the documents, the pre-document review here, before we start the verification. So we go online and we download the documents from the platform and check that we can see the begin verification button, which means that you have already posted and you have selected your verifying body. We have accepted to be your verifying body, and we have appointed a verifier, and that verifier should then be able to see the begin verification button. And unfortunately, also this year, it's not always possible to download all documents from the Higg platform. So we have very mixed results. I have had no verification so far where I was able to download all documents. And sometimes I can download many, and sometimes just a half of the documents. And that means that we will also, we may need to ask you to provide these documents separately to us. And we like to do this pre-document review before we come on site, because it is a way for us to prepare ourselves, to know a bit more about your factory. And then we can also see where we need to spend a lot of time, where we perhaps need to have more information from you, and we have already an overview of your factory. And once we are on site, we begin the opening meeting and begin the verification also online. So we begin the verification by clicking the Begin Verification button. We have interviews with management, mostly in connection with the opening meeting, and we usually also seek to have the factory tour as early as possible during the day so that we can get a good overview of the factory. And then we can do the document review and conduct basically the entire verification. And before we can do the closing meeting, we prepare that as well, which is the pre-closing meeting. We usually use a PowerPoint in order to give a neat presentation back to the factory. And the difference with the off-site and on-site verification is really that for the off-site, obviously, we will not have a factory tour. We will need to rely on your photos, but we also do it a bit differently in the way we manage it. So I will speak more about those differences a bit later. And now let's go to the opening meeting, and I want to give you more detailed information about the opening meeting. So here are some of the elements. We have the welcome and introduction. We talk about the purpose and the scope of the verification. We talk about the agenda and the planning of the verification. Review and talk about confidentiality. There may be areas that are confidential. And we also talk about that we keep all the results confidential. We don't speak to other factories about your results, and we don't even speak to brands, for example, about the results. They have access to the results if you share them. And then we also talk about the independence of the assessment team and the need to be open, transparent. We talk about our ethical approach and also review the conflict of interest policy that we have and that SAC has as well. And for example, also what you need to make sure is that you don't have a mix of training and verification. So if you have been trained by one person to complete your self-assessment, then that person is not allowed to do the verification. And also, so that is really not allowed. You cannot first go and train a factory to complete the self-assessment and then go and verify the results. So that is important to keep those separate in order to not have a conflict of interest. And then we talk about also the criteria and how we report. We talk about what are the next steps, including how we will prepare for the closing meeting. We talk about the factory layout. And sometimes, for example, the factory may have also an overview presentation that we can have a look at before we start the actual factory tour. And then we have the factory tour, and we ask if we can take photos during the walkabout and during the factory tour. And there may be areas where we are not allowed to do that. Obviously, to take photos of the products, we are usually not allowed to do. And of course, we respect that as well. And then we will talk about who will attend and when, and about the closing meeting as well. And then for off-site verifications, we have a call instead of a meeting. So instead of the physical meeting face-to-face, we have a kickoff call in a webinar or in a Skype call. But the content is identical with the on-site kick-off meeting, except for the fact that we are not planning the factory tour. We are talking about the photos that you have then available. And so when we look at the actual document review, when we are on site, we always do all changes in the Higg portal on the screen so that everyone can see any changes we make and how we rate every question for accurate or inaccurate. So you know that you have done your self-assessment, and once we open the VFEM for the verification, we begin verification, then for each and every question in each section, we should, as verifiers, we need to mark up, is your response accurate or is it inaccurate? So we always do that for each and every question. And perhaps there was no response, then we have to mark that up correctly as well. And whenever we say, for example, perhaps you have misrepresented a number, you have given a certain number for your energy consumption and that number needs to be corrected. Then we say that the response is inaccurate and then we make a comment as well. So the verifier always needs to make a comment whenever a response was inaccurate and has been changed, or whenever there was no response and we have then added that. So that is important. Then you can really follow everything. So if you are working in a factory and go through the verification, you should always know the changes we do online in the tool. So you should always be aware of that. So the verifier needs to tell you and show you. Therefore, that's why we very much like to project the entire assessment on a screen so that you can see everything as well. And then for if we go through for on-site, we go through each question on the Higg platform, and we look at the documents required and we review them, and we also discuss, of course, with the person who is responsible. So it's an interaction throughout the entire verification. We're on a dialogue. And then we have shared the digital or hard copy documents. So you may have documents that you don't want to upload to the portal. That is okay. And for example, you should not upload any documents that are confidential for you. Perhaps about your recipes, etc. You should not upload that on the platform. And then you can show us a hard copy instead. But the easiest is, of course, if you can upload as much as possible. And then for offsite, we do it a bit different. The reason is that it is most often difficult to spend one full day or even 2 days just in a webinar. So there is a lot of time in between that is not so effective then. So every so often there are questions that need to be clarified by you at the facility, or documents that need to be collected, and then it is not effective to be in a continuous webinar. And therefore, we often prefer, but it is done a bit differently and it depends on your preferences as well, who is verified. But usually we then do the kick-off meeting in a webinar and then we do the work offline. And from time to time, we send questions via email or chat, and then if necessary, we meet up and discuss. So in that case, in the closing meeting, we would of course go through also any changes made in the portal. So the process here, steps here is to verify each question on the platform, to have a look at the documents and the site photos, and those will then be reviewed in detail. So the photos are really important. I want to stress that again. And then there will be a key document list that will be shared. And of course, digital documents are not only preferred, but they are actually necessary. So we need to have digital documents. We cannot work with hard copies if we do an offsite verification. And then there may be further occurring questions then discussed via emails or calls. So, and now we have finalized our verification. Perhaps we have a few questions left. And in any case, we need to prepare for the closing meeting. So this is what we call the pre-closing meeting. We usually prepare a PowerPoint presentation. If the client wants to have a performance improvement plan in an Excel table format, for example, that's possible to do as well. And but SAC, just to be clear, they doesn't have SAC don't have any formal personal improvement plan requirements. And then we come to the closing meeting. And in the closing meeting, and here the management team or the operations team should be present as well. So we have the PowerPoint, the report of all results, and we also give an overview of the results and summarize the findings of the verification. We summarize the best practices and also show some photos to illustrate the findings. We remind of the confidentiality of the results, and we also, of course, are available for explanations and questions. We talk about the next steps, and then there is an internal review and a feedback survey. And once the quality review has been done, we can submit the verification. And that is the role that we fulfill as verifier. You can then, and you should review the verification results, and then you can finalize the verification. And just to be clear here, the review phase on your side, this is your opportunity. And hopefully in the closing meeting, you are already agreed with all the findings. And that's where it's so important that you ask all questions. You can also say if you don't agree with the results. And then most of the time we can consult the How to Higg guidance and see if the verification results are really correct or not. So what is really important is that you should be satisfied with the results and that you should not have any further questions. But once you can review, once the verification has been submitted to you, you should review it really carefully and make sure that there are no errors and that everything is the way you actually agreed upon during the verification. Then you can finalize the verification, and after that you can post your verified results. And remember, once you have posted your verified results, you cannot unpost them again. So this was actually everything we had prepared to talk about related to the actual verification. And now we can open up for questions. And I have seen that we have a few comments here. All right. And here is a question. This is a great presentation. Thank you. Is the SAC considering blockchain for the digital document send? As far as I know, they are not doing that, but I actually think this is a great idea from you. So we may forward that idea to SAC and to HIGCO. HIGCO is a spin-off company from SAC, and they manage the entire platform. Okay, do we have any other questions? Yes, we will share the slides. So all of you who have registered, you will receive an email from us with the presentation deck and a link also to the recording. And then we have the question, what is the latest updated version of Higg FEM? Well, that is the module, the 2019 Higg FEM module, which is now online. And currently, the 2020 FEM module is being finalized and will be then available to buy from November onwards. So here is another question. What are the difficulties the factories share with you? Anything that slows the factories down? Yes. So what we do see is really, as I mentioned regarding documentation, the necessity to have a really clear structure in the documentation is actually very helpful for factories. So we sometimes see factories who have who have done on their computers, they have done a file structure with all sections, with all questions and all the related documents. And also, for example, for the data collection. So there is a lot of data that you collect, for example, energy consumption, waste, the waste volumes that you have, wastewater, water. And if you do that in a comprehensive Excel table and use the same table basically month by month, day by day, year by year, then that is much better. So that is a big issue we see even with quite advanced factories. The data collection and the sorting and structure of that data, and then in every section for energy, water and waste, you also need to draw your baselines. So you need to decide which year that is the baseline year for you, and then you have your waste volumes and your water volumes, etc. And this is something that factories do haphazardly. So from year to year, they may change their approach, etc. But obviously, you need to define that at a certain point of time, and then keep a structure. Even if it's rolling year by year, you should keep the same structure. And then also one other thing is, should you have an absolute measurement of your baseline and targets, etc., or should you have a normalized one? And if you have an absolute way of measuring, let's say electricity consumption in your factory, if you use absolute, whenever your production goes up or down, also your electricity consumption will change without that you can do a lot about it. So it will differ widely. If you normalize, for example, you have your energy consumption per produced volume of products, then it is a relative number. And then if your production goes up, your electricity consumption will go up, but your KPI, your normalized KPI, will not go up as much. And so that is important, so that you can really see that that changes you do in order to save electricity in this case, that it really works out. On the other hand, if you have very differing production, so for example, one year you are producing only t-shirts, and then the next year you are producing only sweatshirts, then of course your electricity consumption per sweatshirt produced will be higher than for a t-shirt, and then you cannot compare those again. So, but there are means to normalize with standard minutes, and Higg is actually, SAC is actually working on that to update the normalization guidance so that you can use standard minutes as well, which might be a better, at least for some factories, might be a better normalization value. So this is something we see. What we actually also see is often are those basic things about separation of waste, a good and clear signage for waste, but also for chemicals. And what we need is a factory that has a plan for how they want to give signage and ensure, for example, that PPE is used, etc. So this to work in a structured manner. So those were many examples. Let me see. Then what do we see more? No, so the question is, so this year verification is mandatory for all suppliers. No, it is not. The self-assessment, you can decide if you want to do that, and the verification, it's up to you to decide, but you may have brands who ask you to verify. But SAC or Sumera or the verifying bodies, we do not require you to verify. But you may have buyers or brands who ask you to verify. So we are working for some brands where we are doing the verification, and they, for example, ask the verification to be done by end of July or end of August or end of September. And then if you are working at such a factory where you are selling to one of those brands, then it will be mandatory. So that is clear. Okay. Yes, how much time you have to submit the post verification details. It is up to you, perhaps up to 2 weeks or something like that. There is like no deadline. It is really up to you to decide. But of course, the sooner, once you have done the verification, the sooner you can post it, the sooner you can also share your results with your partners on the platform. Yes, the latest How to Higg guideline is included as a link in this presentation, so you can see it once you receive the presentation. Okay, and Yes. Are you seeing every factory with assigned well-trained chemicals managers, or do they rely on their chemical suppliers to give them info? Well, I think it differs. Not there are not so many factories that just rely on their chemical suppliers, especially if we see the mills and dye houses who actually use quite a lot of chemicals. They usually have a good team to do this work. And I can say that even if you have a very good and competent team, it takes time to understand how to respond to the questions, especially in the chemical section, because the chemical section is very long. It has in total 23 questions if you reach all levels. And they are very complicated, and some of them sometimes you need to do real studies, LCA studies, for example, or hazard studies about the toxicity of chemicals, etc. Yes, so we see that suppliers are really, I must say in general, I'm really impressed by all the factories who are working with the Higg FEM. They are investing a lot of time and efforts to understand how to respond and to also to build their systems and to improve their systems. Yes, if any supplier have multiple units but only one site is registered into the Higg index and others are not registered, so other sites need to be registered separately, or is there any option to register in the same portal? No, all the entities need to be registered separately. So basically every manufacturing unit is registered separately. Yes. Can we go for offsite verification for 2019? And if yes, is it through the verifying body or SAC? You can go for offsite verification, absolutely. Everyone can do that, unless perhaps you may have brands who really require you to do on-site, but you can go for offsite verification and you contact the verifying body. You can contact us as well in order to do that. So we don't need to have SAC included into that. Once the verifier finalize the verification so that it can be submitted to you as a factory, we also need to give information about the verification as such. And then there is also always one question about if it has been done on-site or off-site. So that information comes to SAC and to MERA who manages the entire program. So you can just reach out to the verifying body of your choice if you want to do an off-site verification. In the factory, all sub-suppliers of chemicals must be Higg certified. No, they don't need to be that, but there are questions in the EMS section and also in the chemical section if you are working with your suppliers with the Higg as well, and then you will get scored for that. But it is not like mandatory. It's just that you get a few more scores if you can do that. Brand will accept all approved verifier verification. Brand will not force to supplier to go with this verification body or other. Is it voluntary upon supplier that which certification body factory management is chosen? And brand has to accept the verify report. Well, this is something I cannot really respond. It depends on the brand you are working with. Some may just appoint one verifying body, and some may give you a free choice, and some may give you a choice between a few verifying bodies. The benefit of working with a brand's recommendation is that usually the brand can give you another price for the verification than if you would have procured it independently. Because usually if a verifying body can do lots of verifications for one brand, then it's easier to coordinate and we can give a bit of a better price. And then next question, after an offsite verification, do you require an on-site audit to be able to communicate externally? Yes, if you want to communicate externally beyond the Higg core platform, then you need to have an on-site audit. So it is not allowed to communicate externally about the results of an off-site verification. And therefore, it would probably not be effective to first do an off-site verification and then an on-site audit. Then it's better to just plan the on-site audit from the very beginning. Yeah. All right. So in that case, and now, Laura, I'm happy that you can speak now, because now I will hand over to you.
Hello, everybody. So it's great that you all can hear me now. But let's continue with the added value implementing the Higg FEM. So by verifying your results, you not only ensure that your scores are accurate and comparable, but you also add value to your business by enhancing your reputation and increasing your sustainability performance. And we would like to seize this opportunity and support you on your Higg FEM verification journey. Leadership and Sustainability has completed the coursework required to provide training and verification to Higg Facility Environmental Module and Facility Social and Labor Module users. We offer both on-site and off-site verifications and trainings and support you with your self-assessment. In fact, we do not conduct verification just as a tick box exercise, but add value by giving a holistic perspective and hands-on advice on how to improve. Here you can see an overview of all the countries where we offer Higg FEM training and verification. Please do not hesitate to contact us, even if your country is not listed here. We might be able to support you anyway or connect you to one of our partners. On this slide, you can see our local verifiers and trainers. In case of any inquiry in the region, they will be happy to provide assistance. Having a trustworthy partner by your side that can guide you through that process and provide effective advice on how to improve is of utmost importance. We at Leadership and Sustainability would love to be that partner for you. We look forward to assisting you with verifications for FEM 2019. So please contact us to get a detailed verification proposal either via our booking form or via email. At this point, I would like to recommend some of our Higg FEM verification trace series, where we discuss all sections and provide guidance on each question. You will be able to download the presentation and to rewatch it on our YouTube channel as well. And here you can see our growing team. So thank you for attending our webinar. I hope you enjoyed it and feel prepared when it means it's time to verify. Please respond to the survey after this webinar. We appreciate your feedback. Have a nice day or evening. Thank you and goodbye.